All right, well, I got to start with Tom for sure because we go back a little ways.
Hi, I'm Tom.
No, I think I was like,
Why don't you do Tom, Dave? I'll do you.
There you go.
yeah.
That'd be
No, I was a
hilarious.
pup when I met Tom and went to work for Tom over at Malazai and cannot say enough good things about you, Tom. I won't embarrass you too much, but you want to talk about just an incredibly good person, an excellent business person, and that's actually one of the lessons that I learned from you actually recently. You have smart business people and you have good people, but rarely are they the same person. That's another Tomism for you. So, Tom, I'll let you give a little bit of intro on some of your background, all the way from founding SDI, and I mean, you were at Q2, at Malazai,
Well,
on the board
before
of so
that,
many
I,
places.
I think he was doing some hamburger work before
Hey,
that.
you got to tell us the Bob Burger story too.
Okay. Well, hey, good morning. It's just absolute delight to be here. I'm Tom Shen, and I'm an old FinTecher. In fact, I was a FinTecher before there was such a term FinTech. We call it financial services. We help banks, credit unions, and dare I say, savings and loans. Um, so let's see. Thank you, Dave and Tanner, for having me on, and thank you for asking me to tell me a little bit about myself. So start from the very top. Immigrant from Taiwan, came to America for higher education. My dad sent me to Tennessee. Not sure why, but he sent me to Tennessee, in the hills of Tennessee, for higher education. I went to a Baptist academy up in the hills that I'm still very, very closely tied to today, called the King's Academy. But past that, it was all downhill. I dropped out of four different colleges, and ended up flipping hamburgers at Bob's Big Boy. Now, at Bob's Big Boy, you don't call them hamburgers, they're big boys. You get fired for calling them hamburgers. So I was flipping big boys. And while I was there, I signed up for one of these U2 can program schools called Computer Learning Center. And so I learned how to program. And fast forward a few years, had a great opportunity. I was blessed with an opportunity to start a company called Software Dynamics, SDI. And in our 19 and a half years of running that company, we were able to win and serve over 1,200 banks, credit unions worldwide. Some of the largest banks, also some of the smallest credit unions. So I learned so much. It was really learning on the job and learned to do that. And in 2001, none other than Chip Mahan and S1 flew in his private jet. If you know Chip, flew in his private jet and said, Tommy, I want to be partner with you. And so I sold my business to S1, became part of S1. It was a great learning process for me. Past that, I served on a board of Bankers Toolbox, of Q2. I was recruited to help Digital Insight. Digital Insight, literally down the street from my house in Calabasas, California. I had the great opportunity to work with leaders like Jeff Stiefler, CC Morgan, people like that. We were sold to Intuit and thought I just really wanted to try it again. And in 2010, started a little company called Malazai and based it in Austin. We were able to serve 400 banks and credit union before 2018 when Finastra came in and acquired the company. And since then, I've served on 6 different company boards, LP with a couple of boutique funds, and just really hang around the fintech circle because I love it so much. But
Yes.
before I stop, I want to tell you one of my greatest pleasures at Malachi was one day I got a phone call from none other than Dave Mayo. And Dave Mayo said, Hey, Tom, I want to tell you something. My son Tanner, he's worked for me for a couple of years and he's learned everything he can learn from me. Can I send him over your place so he can learn from you? And I thought, gosh, not sure. He probably could teach me a thing or two. He says, just take on Tanner and help him out. So Tanner came on and just did an absolutely incredible job. He worked in various organizations, including working for our Chief Sales Officer, Luann, worked with our Chief Partnership Officer, Steve Rich. And together we won a lot of nice deals along Lies Road. And One day he said, "Hey, me and my dad was sitting in the backyard and we came up with some great ideas and think I want to go out and partner with my dad and do this great thing, which you all are doing right now." So just want to tell that bit of a story. So I've taken up 80% of the time. So let me stop.
Oh, that is outstanding.
That was,
Man, I appreciate it too. We had such a good time and through all that. And I think, in your background, I heard everything from branch automation to online banking to mobile. I mean, you'd be credited with inventing half of it, I mean, you were damn sure there, put it that way, right? Through all those transformations, that's such a feather in your hat. You've seen so much. And Jay, I want to jump over to you, man. I think obviously president of Leader Bank, and I've told you before, we're such fans of bank-born products around here. And from everything that you guys did, kind of home growing things and spinning out ZSuite, and Sid is I believe the chairman over there, right? And on the board of that side, that company's done incredible, and it serves such a niche need, right? As its basis, which is just absolutely brilliant. So Jay, please introduce yourself, man.
Thank you, Tanner. Thanks, Dave. Great to be on here. And of course, with Tom. So let me tell you a little bit about, who I am in the story, I guess, to where we are. So Jay Tuli, president of Leader Bank. I've been at Leader Bank 17 years now, which is hard to believe. So the story is basically my dad came over to the States from India in the 70s. And he actually started off as a teller at a bank, just kind of like getting his feet wet. And he grew up within the bank a little bit. And then some of his neighbors, which were all like immigrants, Greek immigrants, Chinese immigrants, wanted to buy a home, but they couldn't get through the mortgage application process. Like it's just, back then filling a lot of paperwork, these like complicated English words. So he actually helped his neighbors like fill these applications out, like get their mortgage. And before he knew it, they would refer their friends to him when they were buying homes. So we actually set up shop, an independent mortgage company. And then sooner or later, that started doing better than the bank job. So we left the bank and just had a mortgage company. And that was really the most of what he focused on when I was growing up as a kid. When I was a senior in college, what was going on is the big banks were buying up all the local Boston banks. So he had this like dream to start a bank, and he opened doors when I was a senior in college. He got the licensing and all that. So I left college and I spent a couple years at JP Morgan in New York. Then I came back to Boston and I was doing investment banking and software M&A. And I was just burnt out with the hours. And we were having dinner and he said, why don't you just join me and like, let's see where this goes. I could use an extra pair of hands. So that was 17 years ago. And it's just been an awesome time ever since. Really haven't looked back. Interesting chain of events, I will say, that lead us to ZSuite. So one of my first roles at the bank was working in commercial lending. And I would do the underwriting on some of these investors that would buy these rental properties. Because where we are in Boston, we have Tufts, Harvard, MIT, a lot of student housing. And I would see the cash flow they were making and like all this type of stuff. And so during the financial crisis, I bought my first investment property. Then waited a couple of years, bought another. And I firsthand saw this problem where, each unit would have 3 or 4 people. The building would have 3 units. So you have like 9 or 10 human beings living in a property. And you have 3 of them. So I get like 30 checks a month. And it was just too much to like take pictures of, right? Because it would just be like cumbersome. And it was not enough to run it through like a check scanner. So at the bank, we said, there's a lot of people who have this problem. Let's build a rent app. So we built something called Z-Rent, which basically automates rent collection through ACH, organizes it, combines the payments into one consolidated ACH, all this stuff. And we said, we'll just give this away for free to landlords if they bring their banking here. And it was awesome. We brought on like over 1,000 landlords, and these are all mom and pops, right? These aren't like the big institutional landlords. These are the family businesses, mom and pops. Then one of our best landlords said, this is great. By the way, I have all these security deposit accounts for my units. And the Massachusetts state law is very cumbersome. So it's different state by state, but in Massachusetts, you have to send the interest once a year directly to the tenant. You have to have them sign certain forms. They have to be in separate, segregated accounts. And so he was like, basically, look, I know I'm not compliant. And if you're not compliant and you get sued, it's 3 times damages to the tenant. So we naively said, oh, okay, we'll like build something to help you with that. And so we went on
All
a
done that.
year
It's
long,
okay.
yeah, we went on a year-long journey building something called ZDeposit. And ZDeposit basically is a digital tenant escrow account opening product where you can basically open up a security deposit account in a separate interest-bearing account on your mobile phone in like 30 seconds. And it does all that specific compliance for you. And so landlords like love this thing. So we were feeling great. And this also will pivot in a second to our focus on vertical strategies. But we started to see during this time, like, if you really focus on a specific niche and have specific tech and specific people, you can do really good things. So then other banks began asking us to, like, hey, this is pretty cool. Can we license it? And we didn't build this like a SaaS business. We just built this as a product. So, we licensed to one bank, another. By the time we got to our 8th bank, we started thinking, like, you know what, we should probably pull this out of the bank and like get some professional help.
Right.
And Tom had just sold Malazai. And so I naively kind of called him, being like, hey, Tom, like, I need someone to like run this, tech stuff, want to run it? And he kind of, he was great with this time and sort of explained to me, he's like, look, I'm in a different stage in my life now, but I'm going to help you. And we just hit it off. I remember he started like sending me different people to talk to, and I was just like chasing. I was like a dog with a bone trying to meet as many people in like kind of fintech. And then we finally had this like landmark meeting in Calabasas. I always call this coffee in Calabasas. I flew out to meet him. He gave me like 3 hours of his time at Starbucks. And we sort of mapped out like, all right, if you spun this out, this is what it would look like. This is who you need. This is the capital. This is what a cap table would look like. Like, I really knew nothing. But that was a confidence required to take the next step, which was to spin the whole group out into ZSuite Technologies. And, from there, we hired Nathan, and they've been off to the races and really done some awesome things with the product. Like, our group never could have. So
It is so cool.
These
Yeah.
stories, you hear
I
this
love
stuff
it.
so much of, it's almost accidental.
Yes.
And turns into something fantastic. I mean, here Tom's flipping hamburgers and figured out how to do branch automation. I don't know how he did that.
You got it.
But
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of this, and we hear these all the time, guys, it's the kind of the courage to pull the thread a little bit, right?
Right.
And you keep pulling and you keep learning. And about the time you run into a problem, you've actually learned so much along the way that you're now capable of figuring out how to get around that damn problem, right? And the next thing and the next thing. And so I love it.
I've always told people, I think that if you have belief in yourself and problem solving and surround yourself with problem solvers, a lot of problems get solved.
Yeah.
The other thing is you've always got to have somebody out there like Tom that is an expert at a ton of different things and says, yeah, okay, kid, I'll give you some time, right?
Sure.
And
He did that for me too.
basically, yeah, I know he's done it for a million people in this
Yes.
industry, but
Yes.
to donate their time and effort when there's probably nothing there for them.
Right. Right.
And eventually this turns into great things for everybody. But that story is
Great
just
insight.
repeated over and over. And I bet you Tom will sit and tell you, and I can't too, about the people that came before us that helped us get rolling, and it's just that way. And I think the generous people, that it matters. It really
It's an important thing. I want to go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Yeah, let me jump in for 1 second. I really hit it off with Jay through the phone calls, but in person at Starbucks in Calabasas. And really what I saw was a bright fella with ambition and a willingness to listen. I tell leaders today, I know it's not in vogue, but humility, because you have to be humble to listen. Otherwise, why should I listen to you? I know everything. Often we meet so many leaders that have all the answers. I learned from Jeff Stiefler when I was at Digital Insight when he said, everybody's got answers. The smart ones know how to ask the right questions.
Mm-hmm.
And Jay was asking all the right questions. And if you remember, Jay, there were two things I told you in that meeting. I said, look, you're really excited. You got an opportunity here. You build a solution to solve a problem. But is it a product? Is it a company? Do you spin it out? So there were two things that I said to him. And later on, years later, he would repeat them back to me. The first thing is, and as you know, Tanner, having worked closely with me, everything I know, I borrowed or stole from somebody. And this line is from a good friend of mine, Eric Luxemo, where he said, the riches are in the niches. The riches are in the niches. And so you have to find a niche where you could play in. And there was a niche, right? So I said, Jay, you got a niche there. Let's see. Okay. But here's the second piece. Okay. Do you have a solution or are you building a platform? Right? If you're building a feature or some kind of a widget, right? Somebody will come along and give it away for free and it will get commoditized. But a platform sometimes will get monetized.
Right. Oh, nice. Very well said. That was actually what I was going to ask you, Tom. So
Great meeting today. Cut right there.
yeah, perfect. Did it. No, I was thinking about what Jay said, talking about, that going deep into the niche thing, right? And we'd have that similar theme around here all the time where he calls it breadth and depth, right? And I think we found the same thing, that breadth is really important for just general coverage and market penetration and maybe logos, as you used to talk about it, Tom, right? We want to get lots and lots of logos and we got to keep everybody happy, but we need to make sure that everybody fits a similar mold, right? Okay. And stay true to our mission. But the depth is really where you find typically the dollars. It's also a little bit more painful in professional services and things, right? But that's where you find the dollars. And so how do you find, I'd love to hear from both of you guys, how do you find the damn balance there? Right? Do I go wider or do I go deeper? Because there's pros and cons both ways. And how do you know when to do what?
Jay, you want to take it?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. What? No, I love it. One we've been thinking a lot about, especially even more so after SVB and FRB mini crisis. And I'll explain why. But I always say it's like community banks, we need to be very close to the customer. If not, what's our point? So if you're close to the customer, you're listening, they'll tell you. If you're close to the landlords, they'll tell you. If you're close to municipalities, law firms, whatever it is, farmers, they'll tell you what they need. So that's the first thing, having a culture that's listening and wanting to help. And then that brings you to the promised land, ideally. So you know what they need, and then it just comes to like the how to solve it. Now, the flip side of this is you get really good at a niche, you get more of it. You get better, then you have a brand with that niche, you get more of it. At some point, there becomes concentration risk.
Right.
And that's what SVB and FRB showed us. And that was enlightening to me because in our journey over the last 17 years, that's never really come out to light as much as it did then. So now my new thinking is like, you need to go deep on niches, and you need to be quickly able to spin up multiple, because multiple niches are what's going to diversify you.
Well said.
So
I love
Very
this.
well said.
I love this because this is how you also just whip the hell out of competition. It's like somebody's chasing you around.
Oh,
And you're platforming this thing out as, this
and building depth where you need to.
They'll tell you what they want, right? And now, does that fit with our strategy? And then, can we actually make that work? And these things just kind of begin to put themselves together for you. But boy, it makes it tough for the competitors trying to chase you.
Well, it's a timing thing, right? It's a timing thing, right? And what was really, really important from the point of the Calabasas conversation going forward was we have a solution. We don't really quite yet have a platform yet. It could be a platform, but we have a solution that people want. Okay, that's the little niche. We're in this one niche. So how do we think about it, right? So I think about sort of corporate building, if you will, company building, in various stages, right? There's the opportunity. There was an opportunity. There was a decision to spin it out of the bank or sit at your dining room table and start coding, right? There was a decision process. And then there's the formation process, right? And so when Jay called me up after the meeting and said, okay, I've thought through this thing. I want to do it. I want to do it. Will you help me? Will you join my board? Will you recruit a board for me? And let's go get a kick-ass CEO to come here and build that thing, right? And he and I went through this process. We interviewed a number of great candidates, right? And we settled on Nathan to bring Nathan in, right? And that was just the best decision we ever made for the company. And so that process is important. And big leaders have big following. So when you bring in a really good leader, pretty soon they will bring people in.
Solved your hiring problem.
Worked before, right?
Well
Okay. Putting the band back together, right?
Yeah.
You put people back together. So the creation, the funding, the structure was very important. And Jay and his team were able to pull that together. Nathan came in and we built a world-class team. And we've got just incredible people on that team. I mean, Nathan's a great face for the company, but my gosh, behind him, we have several very, very big leaders.
We agree. Absolutely.
I
We always enjoy having conversations with all of them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And when we were spinning out, we had a product and a premise and a hope. And I will say that we were sort of fumbling around a little bit. I wouldn't say like fumbling, but it was going okay. And Nathan and the team really took it to the next level by saying, okay, like, how do we make this more than a really micro niche to something slightly bigger than many banks can work with, which is escrow in general. Like, so rather than move from just tenant escrow, let's talk about escrow in general, because there's a lot of escrow use cases. And that was the aha moment for how to make this a platform, like Tom just talked about. That moved it from like a feature to a platform. And he did the same thing, which is he just met with lots of banks. Now the bank was his client and listened. And pretty soon after, like, the fourth bank told them the same thing, like, we want general purpose escrow and sub-accounting platform. It was like, okay, let's go build it. And we couldn't have done it without Nathan coming in and his team and bringing in that new way of looking at it. And then also there's like a lot of luck, right? We were building this in a low interest rate environment. Now we're in a high interest rate environment. When we were building it, loans was the cool thing. Now it's all about deposits. So that kind of plays well into what we're trying to do. So it's been pretty interesting to watch.
It's really cool.
I'll tell you what,
Yeah.
okay, Nathan has no idea about what I'm about to say. Talk about him so much that he's actually become like a metaphor.
He's a bit of a mascot around here.
Yeah, so we have these conversations and people will be like, listening to you try, you're like finishing each other's sentences. It's like half English,
Yeah.
and because we're talking metaphors to each other, and Nathan is one of them that we talk about the, insight, smart, humility,
Yes.
the ability to not be threatening, but at the same time be patient, listen,
Listener.
and then respond in a way
And
that's
he's a very kind person.
It's almost like soothing,
Yes.
consoling.
Best stated, it's somebody who you want to work with.
Yes.
Whether that's us working with them or partners or bankers or all around, right? They exude trust, and it's somebody who you want to spend time with.
Yeah, I guarantee you he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he's a metaphor. It's like a Nathan, it's like, oh, got it. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I know Jay completely agrees with me on this, that one of his finest attributes and that speaks across the spectrum of leaders, is he takes feedback so well. He takes feedback and then he immediately turns that around and he puts into action. I'll tell you, I know we're not specifically talking about ZSuite, but we're talking about sort of this process and corporate building and leaders. Last year, CSI was taken private, and in that process, Frank Materi, the new chair, asked me to join the board, and I haven't, I've had an opportunity to work closely with CSI CEO David Culberson, and I've known David for a long time, where CSI was a very different company a few years ago to where it is today, owned by a couple, and now today, the announcement by 3 different private equity firms. But to see that transition of David Culberson moving from that kind of ownership structure to a new capital structure, and to be able to go in that next stage and to grow and bring in big leaders, as you see, CSI has also brought in some big leaders like Linda Fisher, Troy Bradley to surround David. It's that kind of ability to take feedback and put it into action that is so important for leaders to grow.
Really well said.